All right. So hello, excuse me. Hello, and thank you for joining me for this month's full scope workshop. Today, we'd like to welcome Lynn Newman from Artichoke Dance Company. She will be talking to us about eco arts activism, performance interventions, community-based creative practices, and use of the arts to enact change. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this workshop is being recorded and will be posted on our county website indefinitely. We will have question and answer after the presentation, and if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, you can either raise your hand icon or you can type it in the chat box and we'll address them as quickly as we can. Now, please welcome our speaker, Lynn Neuman.
Hi, thanks so much, Eileen. So happy to be here. I'm honored to be speaking with you today. And I'm connecting with you from the unceded territory of the Lenape people, today known as Brooklyn, New York. I'm a light-skinned woman with long dark hair and brown eyes. I'm wearing glasses with a little bit of light lavender framing. I'm wearing today a gray top with a maroon sweater, a blue printed scarf, and I have a turquoise pendant around my neck for those who require visual descriptions. So today I'm going to share with you some of my work, some of my history and journey, some perspectives and observations, and some visions and some hopes. So a little bit more about my background. I work at the intersection of performing arts innovation, environmental activism, community building, and civic action through the organization I direct, Artichoke Dance Company. And I'm also going to today share particularly my journey into public art in the performance realm, which now does include some visual art practices, which is more typical for public art. We'll have a little time at the end, as Eileen said, for discussion and for Q&A. So if you have questions and you don't want to retain them, feel free to type them into the chat and we'll be tracking them as we go. If I pause for a moment to get a sip of water, please forgive me. I'll be speaking a lot, at least in the beginning of the presentation. So before we actually get started with the presentation, I want to invite you to imagine the world that you want to live in. What does it look like? And if you want to jot some notes for yourself, feel free to, or you can also type answers into the chat. What does it smell like? What does it feel like? What exists there? And what's different from our current realities? How does it operate? So again, if you want to put a few words or phrases into the chat that describes or depicts that in that world in any way, feel free to do that. We will be coming back to it later. So as things are coming to you, if you want to draw, write, or make note, it may be useful. So as an artist, I'm going to actually start my presentation here. Just a moment. Sharing screen. And playing from the top. Here we go. So as an artist, activist, and organizer, the purpose of my work is to demonstrate that a different world is possible. That's how I envision it. And then work towards creating that society. And the examples I'll give today are specific and scaffold on each other towards that goal. So as a quick introduction to my work, I'm going to play a quick video. So that provided just a little overview of the scope of my work. So here's me as a kid. I was the kid who could not sit still. My parents enrolled me in gymnastics, and I migrated to dance as a teen. Some friends and I would put on shows in the local mall each year, and I guess that's my first foray into public performance, but in putting the slide deck together, I hadn't really ever even realized that. Following graduating from the University of Michigan, I got on a train and I headed east to New York City, where I immersed myself in the downtown dance scene, downtown being experimental and decidedly smaller scale than the uptown institutions like New York City Ballet and Alvin Ailey. I made dances for little hole in the wall spaces with barely enough lighting instruments to light the stage. And over time, the venues got a little bit bigger and a little bit brighter. After 6 years, I went to graduate school thinking that university teaching would be a sustainable path for my dance career. Instead of that, however, a company was born. Artichoke Dance Company started as a collective, a kind of novel idea at the time when every other company was a person's names. There was Trisha Brown Dance Company, David Parsons Dance Company, Bill T. Jones, et cetera, et cetera. So today, the idea of a collective is much more common, but in the 1990s, it was not so much. Critics and funders didn't really know what to do with us, um, uh, with the idea of a collective. It's like, who's in charge? Who's making the work? It was all collaborative. While the metaphor is easy to explain, the artichoke has lots of layers and textures, and it leads to in the middle of a sweet heart at the center. Our belief in the value of multiple voices and perspectives, at least at that time, was a little bit of a harder sell. So, over some years and through the process of attrition, I ended up inheriting Artichoke Dance Company. It was a little bit of an opportunity, but also a little bit challenging. I had spent 10 years building a physical approach to dance partnering that now I could say models equity. At that point, though, I was just trying to figure out how the girls could lift the boys and how I, as a small, petite woman, could lift others, mostly who were bigger than myself. Well, I was making a statement about female power. I was also examining physics and momentum and gravity. And there was a lot of trial and error, but I ended up developing a progressive approach that influences my choreography to this day around partnering. That physical research also really taught me how to listen to my body, to listen through physical interaction, to pay attention to things like pressure and force and timing and momentum and weight, and to listen to someone else's impulses and intentions behind their movement. And this has really been invaluable in the work that I do now. And I use this idea of physical listening and exercises and community building. I moved to Brooklyn from Manhattan in 2005 because I wanted a little bit more space and I also wanted a dog, but didn't really have the heart to bring an animal into the concrete jungle of Manhattan. So I ended up adopting an 8-year-old Golden Retriever Labrador mix and named Sunny. And here is Sunny. After a few years of living in Brooklyn, I realized that my Brooklyn audience wasn't growing as I expected it would. So to meet this gap, I devised a project that would get me and my work out into my neighborhood and community. And that project was You Are Here. I went door to door and met with shop owners, folks in the community, gardens, cafes, parks, and put together a performance project that installed dances in cafes, a beer garden, um, a dress shop window, community gardens, and the largest park in the area. And it worked. The project brought a bunch of visibility and integration into the community, and I still partner with some of these organizations to this day. The park, where the wall is in the upper right-hand corner of the images, got a makeover about a decade ago. But I met someone last summer, and this project was from 2008. I met someone in the park last summer who was reminiscing about the old park. And then she said, I remember this performance that happened along the old wall that was on the south side. And I was like, that was me. So I guess it was also memorable to some folks in the community. So back to Sunny, when you have a dog that you suddenly become aware of what's on the ground, and I'd never had a Labrador before, they're scavengers notoriously. And in pulling things out of her mouth and realizing what was on the ground, I was like, oh, there's a lot of trash and most of it's plastic. So Sunny and I would go to Prospect Park, which is the large park in Brooklyn, the Central Park of Brooklyn, most mornings, and it was 8 blocks away, but as she got older, she couldn't make it that far anymore. So we would sometimes just make it to the corner of the street, which was about 50 yards from my building. And because she was slow, we were always ambling, and I began counting the trash from my door till the corner, which was about 50 yards. Sometimes I'd find 5, 6 pieces, but sometimes I'd find like 128, 150. And then I was like, wait a minute, multiply that trash by 13,000 miles of sidewalks in New York City, and that's an incredible amount of trash. I was like, what happens to all this waste that's on the sidewalks? So I started to do a little bit of deep dive into urban planning of New York City. And New York, like in many older cities in the East Coast, here's what happens. So trash disappears down storm drains and joins the waters from our sinks and toilets of buildings on the way to a sewage treatment plant. With heavy rains, climate change brings a lot heavier rains. We get deluges of rains. And with population increase in New York City, these pipes were put in 100 years ago. Pipes are still the same size. It overloads the system. And the design of this system is that this overflow, where the sewage treatment plant can't handle the volume, it goes directly into the waterways, the local surrounding waterways. And this is called combined sewage overflow. It's by design. So once I discovered this, whenever it would rain, I'd hop on my bike and go to the Gowanus Canal, which was the closest combined sewage overflow outflow area for me. And sure enough, you could see trash and sewage just spilling right into the canal. And that trash then follows water currents, and it either will end up back onto land or in an ocean's gyre. That was the next step of this research. And then I realized the plastic doesn't ever biodegrade, it never goes away. So it just stays there. And in each of the ocean's gyres, there are big trash patches. And this is a picture of the Great Pacific Trash Patch, both from underneath, and supposedly it's the size over twice the size of Texas at this point. So I decided that I was going to create a performance work addressing plastic pollution, and I reached out to the Earth Institute of Columbia University to guide me towards some solid research. And I also began thinking about where this is going to happen and how I could reach more people with this project. And following kind of the water flows of the plastics that were coming out of my local waterways, it ended up on areas beaches. And so I decided, let's go to where the trash and the people are. And one of those places is Coney Island. So I wrote a couple of grants and several came through, and my dancers and I began traipsing out there to rehearse. And in the process of rehearsing, we were still utilizing these kind of uh, partnering techniques with weight sharing, where we were used to doing it on a very flat surface where you don't slide, but on sand, you start to meld into the earth. And in the process of rehearsing, we discovered that there's trash not just on the surface of this beach, but underneath. So another project, we started gathering all the trash that we unearthed and made a little pile of it and took a photograph of it. But it was one of my first aha moments here, where it's like, oh my gosh, there's more trash than I could even see on the surface. And this is a bigger problem than I even imagined. So I began collecting plastic 6-pack holders, which would serve as the base material for the costumes of this work. At the time, there was an image of the turtle that was kind of circulating in the media, and that had where the it had grown, a turtle had kind of gotten stuck in the plastic six-pack holder and grown around it. And it seemed to be a good way to capitalize on the dangers of plastic. So I asked three pizzerias in my neighborhood to save their plastic six-pack holders for me, and they agreed to. And within 3 months, I had 5,000 plastic six-pack holders. And that was another aha moment for me. I was like, first of all, we're drinking way too much soda. But second, that's a whole lot of plastic for something that just is like not even unnecessary. It just slows the guys down at the pizzeria. They didn't even want it. So I had all these plastic six-pack holders, and I asked a friend and colleague, crochet artist Olek, if she would work on the costumes with me. I'm also a crocheter. I had learned the skill from the older woman that lived next to me when I was growing up. So we decided to teach some people a basic crochet stitch and held a workshop to create the base components for the costumes that they connected two or three of these plastic six-pack holders using crochet. And into my working process, this introduced participation and community integration and skills building as part of my practice. And then with those component parts, Alec then connected them to create the costumes. And I included a little photo of Sunny wearing a hat and one of these two. So around this project, which was called Your Planet, I joined forces with the American Littoral Society, which is an organization that monitors the health of our shorelines and also runs beach cleanups. And so I volunteered as a coastal cleanup coordinator and organized beach cleanups along with the performances. The American Littoral Society provided all the supplies and the methods for collecting data, and we recruited the people. So these gatherings brought new audiences to us and integrated action and stewardship into the practice and the project. The following summer, we repeated it and got a feature in the New York Times, so it boosted our volunteer participation significantly. I had become involved in some larger networks and with other organizations focusing on plastics and water pollution, and teamed up with a couple of organizations to organize a trash tour of New York City for the BMW Guggenheim Lab, which was in New York for a couple of years. And created this character called polyethylene, and polyethylene is a type of plastic. And was delivering these kind of tongue-in-cheek monologues about the hazards of plastic, and into both human health and into the environment. But this introduced education and also immersion in places into my work. We actually toured to like trash facilities and would have to get up on fences oftentimes to see over the side because they're all very walled off. So we were still performing in theaters at this time, but I kept thinking about all the people at the beach and the people who stopped to watch and take pictures of video, and some people would even join us in dancing. And I began to really ask myself, do we continue climbing up the ladder of performance venue in New York City? Or do I start to pivot my work? And I was feeling more drawn to kind of the environmental aspect of the work. And I remembered some advice I had gotten early on as an artist, and that was pursue the work you're most interested and passionate about, because that's where you're going to do your best work and where you're going to see the most results and rewards from. So today, Artichoke Dance Company mainly performs in highly public locations. This project really changed my practice. Since then, we've danced in parks and plazas, on beaches and bridges, and atriums, and in the middle of Fifth Avenue. We've refined our mission and are working with environmental orgs, arts orgs, civic engagement organizations, and locally in our community and across the country. We're connected to a network of environmental groups and that support and enhance our work, and with whom we collaborate. We've introduced people to dance and engaged them in environmental activism. We've learned to navigate crowds and draw crowds along. And all this began because I actually took the time or was guided by my dog to see what was actually there. So to wrap up the story of Sunny before I move on to further developments in the work. Interestingly enough, or coincidentally enough, Sunny passed away during Hurricane Sandy, which was the big hurricane that hit New York City over a decade ago. Um, the next day, I felt like I needed some closure, so I took her favorite ball to Prospect Park, and lo and behold, what I found is that it was barricaded off, and parks guards and employees were there discouraging people from going in. And I approached one and explained to him that, my dog had passed away. I was trying to find some closure, and I had this whole kind of, diatribe I was going on. And then he stopped me and he said, "Wait a minute. You're that trash lady that does those performances on the beach in those crazy costumes." And I was like, "Yeah, that's me." He was like, "Go ahead, go in, just be really careful and don't tell anybody that I let you in." So what that taught me was that you never know who's going to see you, and you never really know, like, the impression that you're going to make and the value that you're going to add to somebody's life. So in doing this work, I feel like sometimes we know our impact and sometimes we don't know our impact, but sometimes it comes back and reflects back to us. I do have a new dog, by the way, who is now approaching Sunny's age, Serafina, and she's highly involved in the work. So because of my work in atypical environments, I had gone out into the community and gone out into the local beaches with some visible projects. I landed a commission from the Dumbo Improvement District to enliven the Manhattan Bridge overpass. So this is an archway space that had been closed and walled off for years, and it divided the north and the south side of Dumbo. So there wasn't a lot of transverse for the different businesses on the different sides of the bridge because this archway was closed off. Um, the Dumbo Improvement District had gotten some funds to renovate it, and they opened it up, expecting that it would really help the commerce between the north and the south side, and people were not traversing this and using it at all. So they went to the Brooklyn Arts Council for recommendations of artists that could maybe enliven the space, get people there, and start to kind of make it a place that people would inhabit. And because they were a funder of ours and had funded some of these projects that we had done outdoors, they recommended us. So what I created was a piece called Public, which were pop-up performances that happened kind of within the audience that had gathered underneath the arch. We had created an inviting and lit up space, which was unusual. This was usually a fairly dark space. We released a playlist of commissioned music ahead of time. We were delivering the music on personal listening devices because the train runs overhead and it is so loud when it goes overhead. There was no way that music was going to overpower the train sounds. And that kind of created a little bit of interest of like, what's going on here? We're listening to music on our iPads or on our iPods and our phones. Um, and the performance ended up with a flash mob of 30 dancers erupting from within the audience. So it kind of grew throughout the evening. Today, the Archway is a very lively space and has a weekend market. And this project taught me how arts can actually solve real world problems and really enliven spaces and make them come to life. So around materiality, waste, and culture, I kept asking a question: when do what things that we perceive as convenient become not so convenient anymore? And that was in part spurred by the plastic six-pack holders and the conversations I had with the people at the pizzeria, because those plastic six-pack holders were certainly not convenient for them. So my next target material that I landed on was the single-use plastic grocery bag, in part due to the fact that plastic bag legislation ban had been passed in New York City, but then was thwarted at the state level, which is a common tactic used to restrict environmental legislation. Bags were becoming a political battle in New York State, but were also an example of the question I was asking, because a single-use plastic bag, it's a convenient way maybe to get your groceries home, but its relative utility of its life is 15 minutes or less. So I had a drawer bursting with bags, and New Yorkers don't really have a whole lot of room in our small apartments. And when I started collecting them, I found out that all my friends and everybody I talked to also had a ton of bags and didn't really know what to do with them. So when I first started working with bags, I was an artist in residence at the Alberta College of Art and Design in Alberta, Canada. And prior to my arrival, the college had put out a call to the community to bring in their used bags and deposit them in the public atrium space that I had decided to work in during the residency. And I was so nervous that there weren't going to be enough bags that I gathered a bunch and shipped myself a big box of bags just so I had some to work with when I arrived. And when I arrived, there weren't a whole lot, but as I started working in the next 2 days, they started piling up, and this was a fairly large atrium. And within a couple of days, like there was a mound of them in the corner that was just like, holy smokes, which was another aha moment just for myself and also for the students and faculty. Like we all have a bag of bags, but we put our bags together and holy smokes, this is a lot of bags. Um, so I invited students and faculty I set up workstations and would just be working publicly, and invited people to just drop by and to fuse bags with me. I was working on creating a set piece with them. And as we worked, we'd talk about plastic pollution and the fact that bags were made up of fossil fuels and the problems with the chemicals used in the bags that give them their specific qualities like stretchiness or squishiness. The fact that those bags aren't recycled, though we're led to believe that they are recycled. They're kind of the bottom of the recycling quote unquote food chain. Um, and I discovered that this was a great way to have conversations about a really serious issue in a non-confrontational or preachy kind of way. And in the doing and the collective making together, it was very disarming. So I had discovered kind of another hook, and another way to engage people was in the doing and in conversation. So this then became part of my practice, trashin, creating fashion from trash, and it became a new pursuit. And through hands-on workshops, people were collecting bags destined for landfill. We were making outfits together, learning about the perils of plastics, and having a lot of fun. And I began thinking more about how I could use this and my platform, not just for raising awareness, but for creating greater action. We began dancing in the plastic bag costumes. Believe me, they're very, very hot. They don't really breathe. People would respond, they would get the message. They'd be like, I get it, that's great, but now what am I supposed to do? And I was like, ooh, missed opportunity. You're actually looking towards me to guide you to do something. So at shows and events, I started talking briefly about the proposed state legislation and would pass petitions out throughout the audience during the show. And we'd gather like hundreds of signatures in a couple of minutes. People were always happy to sign and thanked us for that work. And it was so much easier than standing at the farmer's market on the weekend trying to gain signatures, which you'd gain maybe like 50 in a couple hours. This was like hundreds in a couple minutes. So I was like, this is a really efficient way to get some backing here for this legislation. Around this time, I'd also discovered a new initiative, Global Water Dances, whose mission was to use dance as a way to advocate for access to clean and safe water worldwide. And I began organizing with their biennial events. Topically, this linked the plastic work to water quality and broadened more the environmental platform within which I was working. And part of the structure of global water dances is that there's a participatory dance that was created that was sourced from material that movement material that people had sent in that people learn and do across the globe. So we held workshops mostly outdoors and taught the global water dance to whoever showed up. And I also reached out to a couple of local schools and asked them to participate. So we got some students and teachers also involved. On Global Water Dances Day, we all did the Global Water Dance together. And this introduced participation in my practice in a different way, which was through what we actually did. It was through dance. So during the workshops and on-site rehearsals, people would stop and ask, "What are you doing?" And after many conversations, I began to realize that by default, we were becoming arts advocates. Rather than being isolated in a studio, we were out in the community talking to folks both about our work and about the issues that it was related to, increasing awareness and building audiences, and expanding the perception of the role that arts and artists can play. Through some connections with a sculpture park and a community organization I had in upstate New York, we devised a project that kind of mirrored what I had done with Global Water Dances um, in New York City with the upstate community. And we called this project Liberate the Earth. So folks collected plastic bags in their community, and through workshops, we guided them to make their own costumes, and we taught them a community dance. And then we all performed it together on the opening day of the sculpture park, Oh My, art called Art Oh My, for that season. And it was the largest opening day that the Arts Center had ever seen. So it was a win-win for all of the organizations. We were expanding the geography of our work, and they were expanding their audiences and cross-pollinating them. The project in practice is now a part of our regular offerings and has been replicated at other places. Here at the Southern Vermont Arts Center in Manchester, Vermont, where we worked with the Arts Center and engaged local high school students and had a performance with them on the grounds of the center. So while the bag bill was being considered in New York State, I'd show up at rallies with the costumes that I had created and that we had created at workshops and get people to wear them. And also brought them to the New York State Capitol in Albany, where with the Plastic Bag Coalition that I had been organizing with across the state, where we were delivering all of the petitions. And so we staged it with the turn over the petitions to the elected officials pictured here in the upper left. And some of us were wearing the plastic bag costumes. The cameras were there, and we made the local news that night. And what that taught me was that really good visuals can gain you some media coverage, along with good timing and the element of surprise, because nobody expected that we were going to have plastic bag costumes there, right? Um, and the plastic bag bill passed in the legislative session that year, effectively bringing a plastic bag ban to New York State. So the kind of upcycling practice has influenced our practice in terms of materiality, and we no longer use any virgin materials in any of our productions. For me, it demonstrates creative reuse and circular materiality. It also saves us money. We can just collect it from folks and we don't have to go buy it. So we've shared this practice through several projects, pictured here with a school close to us, PS 32, where the entire school participated in creating a performance event in their schoolyard. Sharing our hands-on approach, the students made their own costumes and did their own collection drive, and created their own dances, and then expanded our practice and the reach of the work. The students also created an outreach and messaging campaign with postcards that were distributed into the community from student-made artworks on things that had resonated with them from that project. Another example is a collaboration that we did with Rider University, where we worked with dance, costume, and stage design departments, as well as dining services, to conceive of a project that used all upcycled materials. The sets were constructed with plastic clamshells and other plastic products that would have been discarded from dining services. And the plastic clamshells were a particular problem because they were a holdover from the pandemic when students were eating out of their rooms, but students were still continuing to really make big use of them. So these were collected and became the base materials for the set design. And then along with the dance performances, which had students dancing alongside the professional dancers of Artichoke Dance Company, campus sustainability had created some public service announcement style videos, bringing light to the issue of single-use plastics on campus and discouraging their use. So just another example of how that project has expanded. So I met a photographer, Robin Michaels, at an artist residency some years ago, and we found some commonalities in our practice. Her work focused on documenting communities living next to fossil fuel and industrial pollution sites, excuse me, such as refineries and steel mills. So our shared impacts on the impacts, our shared interests on the impacts of waste led to the creation of a project that we call Waste Side Story. It's a photo project that tells the visual story of single-use plastics from cradle to grave through trash and photography. So as I said before, plastics are made of fossil fuels, and in the background of this photo is a fossil fuel refinery. The project also includes photos of fossil fuel tank farms where fossil fuels are stored, on the back of trash trucks, at a marine trash transfer facility, at tipping point floor of a recycling facility, and in the ocean, among other places. That project actually turned into a public art project through New York City's City Canvas Initiative, which places art on temporary structures like construction fences, trying to beautify them or enliven them. So we took some of the images and layered them with facts and then questions to spur thinking about people's actions. So the project has hung on several different fence locations in New York City, which took the work from just a website and gave it more visibility. And we just worked within the existing opportunity of the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs and expanding this project into the public realm. So now my work is mainly focused on locations that are environmentally compromised or poised for change, like environmental justice neighborhoods and locations. And locally, this has played out around the Gowanus Canal, which is New York City's first Superfund site due to decades of industrial pollution and the combined sewage overflow that I had described earlier. The neighborhood is also undergoing the largest scale rezoning in New York City in 20 years, which brings with it a lot of change. So when I first started working in and around Gowanus, I joined the Gowanus Neighborhood Coalition for Justice, which connected me to a lot of people and provided a platform for organizing the advocacy that I wanted my work to be affiliated with. So in and around Gowanus, I've produced several festivals of art and action, and my latest format for engagement here is a performance tour, an immersive performance tour, which combines an informational walking tour of the area and site-specific performances and interactivities involving people and what's actually happening in a place. And I put together a short reel that I'll just share with you now.
We got about this much water and that much pollution. The canal is the most polluted waterway in the nation due to historical industrial activity and ongoing combined sewer overflow. Can anybody say CSO? CSO. Combined sewer overflow.
I know people who've been fighting against the rezoning and kind of using the arts and performance as a tool to kind of raise awareness about what is at stake here in this rezoning battle. I'm really glad I came out today and I really got like a good context of what's going on.
Mi nombre es Arturo Moreno. Aprecio mucho el trabajo que está haciendo Artichoke Dance Company. Me interesa mucho lo que hacen, es importante para que la gente esté más atenta a lo que está pasando en la comunidad.
So the first legislative success with the plastic bag it pushed me to seek ways that the arts can be more than just awareness raising, which I often feel like they're relegated to in the activist realm, that arts are seen as the messenger or the interest grabber, right? So something that we're doing now within the context of performances as more direct activism. So within these tours, we signed petitions advocating for community benefits in the rezoning and helping people to write testimony in and around the comment periods, which together with the coalition work led to some historic wins for the community, including $200 million in capital needs funding for public housing in Gowanus that was still sitting with mold in the walls from Hurricane Sandy over a decade later. And we also called our senators on the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. So we all got out our cell phones and I had call scripts. I didn't write the call script. I just borrowed them from environmental organizations with who we work. And everybody got out their calls and called the senators, and it was the weekend, so nobody was in their offices. But I love to imagine that on Monday morning when all the staffers come in, they're like listening to all the voicemails and they have to, make notations of all the things. And they're like, oh, we got 50 phone calls from people this weekend on this particular bill. So I love to think about that image. Anyway, so we're thinking about and working on how we can leverage both our positionality and our trust with our audiences and connect them to more direct action, which amplifies things that we wouldn't be able to do on our own, right? The last few years, we've developed a collaboration with several environmental organizations for higher visibility projects that follows the inclusive kind of creative process that has been developed over the years, involving the collection of waste materials, the build out of visual art installations from them, and the staging of the installation in the Mermaid Parade, which is a high profile event that takes place every year in Coney Island, drawing over 250,000 viewers. So the first project with Surfrider NYC and 350 Brooklyn, two environmental organizations, built a simulation of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch from the perspective being underneath the garbage patch, using the detritus collected from beach cleanups. We made this kind of thing that looked like you're underneath the water line and there's trash hanging down. And this was stewarded throughout the parade route by 30 volunteers and animated by the dancers along the parade route. People got the message right away. I was following along the parade route, kind of listening to what was happening in the crowd. And people were like, oh, we get it. Plastic pollution in the ocean. Stop using plastic. It's a very kind of rowdy event. And it won the Judge's Choice Award that year. So reaching an audience, a larger scale audience than we kind of ever had, thinking about that. So I'm often asked from my years of kind of experimenting and growing in this space, how to do this type of work. I was getting calls from other artists interested in merging their practice with environmental action. And while I certainly don't have all the answers, I developed some strategies. And so after I got enough calls, I decided, well, I'm going to put together an eco arts activism training program so that we can provide some tools and strategies and mentorship and a platform for people to actually work on this practice. So annually, we offer an in-person and week-long intensive grounded in Gowanus in Brooklyn. And we have online fall and spring modules for those who cannot or do not want to make the trip. We've graduated 8 cohorts, and there's the link for those who might be interested in checking the program out. We'll be opening up the summer intensive application process here in a couple of weeks. Well, an outcome from the summer 2024 Eco Arts Activism cohort was the formation of an Eco Arts Festival. So the cohort expressed the desire for a platform to showcase their work collectively. So we just made it happen in the spirit of collaboration, and 3 months later produced an Eco Arts Festival during Climate Week NYC, which is a large-scale gathering, global gathering that happens in New York City in September. And I really wanted it to be during that time to bring the arts into the realm of Climate Week, which tends to be a more kind of corporate type event. So the festival from 2024 was the first, grew in 2025 to include an open application process. And for 2026, we're including a commissioning process, and we'll be able to commission 5 artists to create new work for the festival. That application will also be coming out in a couple of weeks. So as we've become kind of leaders in this eco arts activism space, I'm now thinking about how we can create greater opportunities for other artists to also get engaged and involved in this work. And it's my belief that what's needed is a cultural shift in order to create the large scale change that we need around environment and climate issues. We have the science, we have the solutions. What we don't have is the collective will to make the scale of the change. And this is where artists come in, because artists create and influence culture, and we need a lot of arts and a lot of cultural workers to make the change in the world that we want to live in. So that kind of sums up my journey to the present moment, and I'm going to shift now to look at a couple of opportunities in the public art realm that I've been involved with, and how performance has fit into these opportunities. So public art with Percent for Art programs, which are peppered throughout the country, which takes a percentage of tax dollars and devotes them to public arts, is often seen within the context of visual arts, right? It's a visual art opportunity to beautify a space or to place a sculpture somewhere. I've leveraged some of these opportunities to make it fit within my work. But public art doesn't need to be restricted to visual arts and static objects in space. So the Department of Transportation in New York City has 2 programs. One is Arts Partners that puts a request for proposals to quote unquote, beautify a public space in some kind of way or make it more functional. So within this, performative things that have happened have been engaging people in storytelling and or testimony writing, going back to Kiwanis, in addition to some more visual art projects. The Department of Transportation also has a programming partners list, which we're lucky in New York City to have a program called Open Streets, which started during the pandemic to provide more open space for people to gather in and for events and things to happen in, and also for outdoor dining. This program has continued post-pandemic with arts programming in streets and in public places. And so the Department of Transportation has curated a list of programming partners that they have vetted and verified that they know will provide quality arts programming and have the capacity to do it in a public place. And so we've partnered with that program for 6 or 7 years since its inception, and have been connected with opportunities there. Here are some of the examples that we've done through those programs. Performances in streets, the lower left. This was just recently from the Department of Transportation had an event called Trick or Streets that they programmed for Halloween, and we taught a very pared down version of the dance from Thriller from Michael Jackson, and that was a big hit. We've also continued our Trashin', Fashion from Trash, helping kids make their Halloween costumes out of recycled and upcycled materials. Those are just a couple of examples of how we've worked with the Department of Transportation. Municipal arts partnerships are another way that municipalities work with the arts. There are several cities. If you actually go to the Municipal Arts Partnerships website, it lists programs kind of from across the nation. There is one in New York City that's in partnership with the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs that's called Public Artists in Residence. And it connects artists into municipal agencies to solve problems, such as in the Department of Corrections. So this program began in 2015, inspired by the artist Merrill Letterman Euclides, who began working with the Department of Sanitation in 1997. Over 25 years, she was the first kind of public artist in residence in New York City, and then the program was formalized in 2015. Pictured here on the left is artist Tanya Falazada, and her residency was with the New York City Commission for Human Rights, and her project redesigned waiting areas of probation offices to be more inviting. So I encourage you. Oh, and the one on the right is the artist Lynn, who was last year the new artist in residence with the New York City Department of Transportation, pictured there, uncovering some old signage that became an art exhibit at the department. The Flynn Theater in Vermont has a new commissioning program called Breakthrough, specifically for performances in public spaces. And this program has 2 tiers. Unfortunately, for this year, the application is already closed. But for those in performance, you can keep your eye out for this in the future. The incubator program is for works in early development stages and works in process, and provides space and support to develop the work or develop aspects of the work, as well as some funding. The producing platform is for more advanced stages of work where they're ready to premiere fully in a location in Vermont. I'm going to invite you, if you know other opportunities, to put them in the chat. And I'm going to close out with a quote, and then we'll invite us to share opportunities that we know about and have a conversation. So this quote is from the actor, director, and activist Ossie Davis. Any form of art is a form of power. It has impact. It can affect change. it can not only move us, it makes us move. And this fits with my framing of dance as both a way to model the society that I want to live in through choreography for me, which is about collaboration and co-creation, but also metaphorically as a motivator to get us up and taking action, doing and being together to create the change that I want to see. So not only do we need to envision the world as if it were otherwise, we need to and we can create it. I do this through entertaining, educating, engaging, and empowering in every way I can. With what you do, I ask you to consider how you do it and imagine how else you can, and then to act upon your vision and to make that vision toward making that vision a reality, because in today's world, we need to be the change that we want to see. So with that, I'll stop my screen share and open it up to questions. And also for people to, if you have opportunities for artists, for public art, art in the public realm, to share those in the chat or unmute to share them verbally. Thank you so much for sitting through my lengthy PowerPoint presentation. I would also invite thank you. Thank you for putting Lawrence, the Clark County Public Arts Program. Curious if everybody here is local to Clark County or if folks are elsewhere.
I have a question for you. If you,
Yeah, Lawrence.
I would just say I would I really thank you for your talk. It's really wonderful. What would you tell someone who's, a painter in their studio who wants to break into this kind of work? Like would they get out of their personal practice and into community practice?
I think you just have to try something. I've found in working and try something, invite people and partner. So what's really been useful for me in growing that aspect of my work is partnering with other organizations. It brings other people into the work. I found that particularly in activist realm, a lot of the environmental orgs and or social activism orgs want to partner with artists. They're really eager to dive into that work with you. And you don't have to worry about bringing all the ideas or having a fully baked project to present to them. They're generally working on things, and so those types of things can evolve together. So if you have something that's of interest to you in society, find an organization that's kind of working on that and reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm an artist. I want to do more public facing work. What are you guys working on? Can we have a conversation? And even just start there. Or if you have a more fully baked idea of something that what you want to do, then then put it like a one page pitch page together. Like, here's my idea. Here's who I am. Can we have a meeting and talk about how we might work together? I found that to be really successful. To have a little something that puts an idea in front of people, even if it's not a fully concrete idea, it makes it seem concrete to them, which can then sometimes in their eyes give you more credibility. It's like, oh, this thing is really happening. We just have to jump on board, right? So that can be a really useful tool, A couple of images, a little bit about you, a little bit about what you're thinking about, can go a long way. Yeah. And if you're interested in working on something like that, we develop those tools in the Eco Arts Activism Training Program. So would welcome you in that as well. Was that useful? Eileen, curious if you have other resources in your area that you know about or could share?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Wasn't talking there. We actually do. I do have a few announcements with opportunities around here at Clark County that I want to go over. But are there any other questions from attendees that we can address right now before I do that? No, not at the moment. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just go through my opportunities really quick. And then we'll go back to Lynn for some final words, if that's all right. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and share. All right. So let me know if you see my screen okay.
We've got it, Eileen. We can see it.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so a few things coming from Clark County. Our next full scope for next month is going to be with speaker Susan Israel. She is from the group Climate Creatives. She will be speaking about public art in science. So that'll be the third Tuesday of the month, March 17, same time, 3 p.m. Through the same link, except it's going to be for March 2026. Okay, we also have a couple of opportunities. We have our community engagement opportunity called Stencil Art Project. The deadline for this has been pushed back to March 15th. By the end of the day, each design is going to be paid $500. And these stencils are going on all of these metal drum trash cans, which will be distributed among all of the Clark County parks. So your artwork could possibly be in all of the parks in Clark County. We also have a public art opportunity called the Red Rock Legacy Trail Cyclist Sculpture. This is an RFQ, so you will only find this through our bonfirehub.com. This is a larger public art project, so this is something for more of sculptors who are a little more advanced. And then we also have our Wetlands Art Day, March 21st. We're looking for artists who can do plein air art paintings. And that will be on site during the Wetlands Art Day event. Then we have a few things going on at the Pearson Gallery. We have Corey Harper. I believe he is our next solo series artist. His artwork will be there from January 15th to March 12th. We also have some temporary public art going up. The Things We Keep right now by Nicholas Denson is on view at the Pearson Community Center, which is the same area that Corey Harper's exhibit, I believe, will be located. And then we have Harmonies, which is an art installation at the Silverado Ranch. We have, I believe, a dedication for it on Tuesday, February 24th at 11 a.m. So these installations are temporary public art installations that we have been going through lately. And these usually just, they're installed at these specific sites for a few weeks, and then we take it down and re-rotate it to another place. We also have Head in the Clouds, Feet on the Ground by Chad Scott on view right now at the Melvin Ennis Recreation Center, and that'll be there till March 3rd. A couple more things going up. We have Dream Circles by Jamie Zapeta, Manas by Linda Schaefer, and those will be up until March 3rd. And I believe Linda Schaefer's is only for a couple of weeks, so that will be closing pretty soon here. So definitely check those out. Those are in our community centers. One is at Walnut and the other one is at Silverado Ranch. We have a couple of events also. Till the Wheels Fall Off is our Rotunda Gallery event right now. That'll be Saturday, February 28th, 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then we have Shapeshifters, which is an art workshop at the Kara Coleman Senior Center. I believe this one is, yes, registration is required for this one, but it is a free event. It is going to be with a local artist, Cameron Cools. He's going to be covering desert tortoise and contribute to a public sculpture. We also have Together in Bloom, a youth art workshop at Searchlight Community Center on February 28th with Megan Dragon. And then another Shapeshifters. Oh, that's the same one. Excuse me. That is a duplicate. Lauren is actually the coordinator for the youth art workshop. So this is definitely something that they can speak of if you have any questions. And then, of course, our ongoing calls, our public art project evaluator is always open. If it's something that you want to experience as a public artist, it's definitely a great thing to have in your pocket. We also have an open, let me move this, sorry, something popped up. We also have our open call for qualifications for musicians and performers. And this is exactly what this full scope workshop was about, was trying to get all of our performance artists out of the shadows and out in the open, so we can highlight these local artists as well, not just murals and sculptures, but we also want the performance artists out there. So that's a great roster to add yourself in if you are a performance artist. And then our monthly art committee board meeting every second Tuesday of the month. The next one will be Tuesday, March 10th at 3:30 p.m. You can join us in person here at our Parks and Rec admin building in Sunset Park, or you can also join us through our WebEx link for our meeting. And then we have a few resources from other entities in town. This one is from the City of Las Vegas. They have a couple of opportunities open at the moment. They have the Celebrating Life 2026. These are for artists that are age 50 and over. And this closes April 22nd. The other one is a call for artists art in public places exhibition. I believe they are looking for, let's see, artists to submit artwork for an exhibition with the added opportunity to have your artwork purchased for the city's public art collection. So this is a great one, whether you're a public artist or not. If you have a piece that you would like to try to exhibit for this one, it's a great opportunity. Also for City of Las Vegas, they have things going on. Third Annual International Mother Language Day on February 21st. And we also have a grant info session for artists in arts and culture organizations February 18th. I believe that one is ran by Nevada Arts Council. So that could be a very informative one if you are interested in public art. And then for Henderson, we also have opportunities in Henderson at the moment. They have the Army Street benches open right now. They're looking for artists to paint Army Street benches in the Water Street downtown corridor. So they're looking for 12 artists or art teams with the theme of the flow of time on Water Street. So very, very exciting. We don't usually have very many public art opportunities coming in. They like to direct select a lot of artists. So when they put out opportunities, definitely grab them. And then, of course, we have Nevada Arts Council. I'm not going to go through each one. They have so many amazing grant offerings right now for artists here in Nevada. So definitely always check out their website for what they're always offering. And then last but not least, we do offer one-on-one meetings here at Clark County Parks Public Arts Office. Any of our staff members are open to meet with you for 30 to 45 minutes, whether it's online or in person or over the phone. We can go over things like documents, like letter of intent, CVs, portfolios, putting together any of those submissions for public art projects, or just simply trying to figure out how to start with public art. We're always open for answering questions. If you have any, just shoot it over through email. We're always here to help. Yeah, so I think that's all I have for you. Let me stop sharing. And then let's go back to Lynn. Lynn, do you have any other last words for us?
I just want to say I put a couple of things in the chat. So I had mentioned the municipal arts partnerships that the PAIR program is part of. There's also within a municipal arts partnerships examples of other partnerships across the country. So you can look into those either as an artist for opportunities or as an organization or municipal worker, depending upon who's listening, to see how other places have gone about leveraging the power of the arts in their communities to create change. I also put in the chat a link to our Eco Arts Activism training program for those who might be interested in merging their arts with an activist practice in communities. I want to say thank you, and I'm so heartened and delighted to see all of these opportunities out in Nevada. So thank you for sharing that, Eileen. Wow,
Course.
it's like, yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
we're
Thank you for your work and
trying.
your support of artists in your own area. It sounds
Of
amazing.
course. Definitely. We try the best we can here at Clark County, giving as much opportunities as we can with our local art community. We're kind of behind in the whole art scene, but we're trying to push ourselves to, get to where we have our own identity here in Las Vegas and in Clark County. So we definitely appreciate you and all of your input and feedback and insight on your work. I am absolutely in love with your work. I think your projects are wonderful, and especially with the whole activism part of it, because art is activism, right? That's what they've always used art for, is to convey messages that we want to convey. So projects like this, these are wonderful, and I would really like to see a lot more of these types of projects. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely. Hope
And
everyone got some ideas. And as I always say in our Ego Arts Activism training program, when you see a good idea, use it. Right? There are no new ideas. We just recycle ideas. So if there's a good one, use it. Make use of it, right? Things, yeah. Yeah.
or and is it okay if there are these links that you shared on the website that we'll be posting this video
Absolutely.
at?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. I will go ahead and do that. So once we have this video posted on our website, we will have all that information that Lynn just shared with us, just in case our attendees would like that information. Yeah, so anyway, I think that's all I have. Thank you so much again, Lynn, for coming and speaking to our community. Thank you so much, attendees, for joining us today for Full Scope. I hope to see you again next month when we invite Susan Israel from Climate Creatives. She's going to talk to us about projects that demonstrate various aspects of her work, like using public art for science. So definitely another amazing workshop with a lot of great information. Any last words, Lynn, for you before I
Thank you so
close out
much
the workshop?
thank you so much for reaching out and for letting me share my work and my process. And I hope it's been useful for those who are listening or listening in the future. And I invite you to reach out. You can reach us through our social medias at Artichoke Dance or through our website.
Yes, definitely. And we will have all that information as well for all of our attendees.
Great, super, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much again. Everyone have a wonderful Tuesday, and I will see everyone next month. Thank you.
Bye.